Alright, hello everyone, back again. You know the deal by now. We're looking at Cologne's E imports and A imports. Let's just get straight into it. You know the rules by now, but I'll do a quick little intro just to explain those who are new. In case you're unaware of the rules and regulations of import players in the European League of Football, here's just a quick summary. Americans, Canadians, Japanese players, like A's, any European player that isn't in the country of the team's residence, we're looking at Cologne, so any non-German Europeans, as well as Samoans, Australians, New Zealanders, all count as E players. The last thing is that where you started playing football is what nationality you are. I know that sounds odd, but because of Europe and everyone moving around quite often, it has to be, I guess, this way. A good example of this is Madden Siestro. He plays receiver for Hamburg last season as a German homegrown player, moves to Madrid because of his Spanish citizenship, but he's still an E player because he started playing football in Germany. We have All-Star, Starter, Role Player, Bench Player questions remain. All-Star, I think, speaks for itself. Starter would be they start on most, if not all, teams. Role Player is they fill a role within that team, but they might not be able to fill that role in a different team. Bench Player, player that comes off the bench is a certain reason or a certain scheme. And the questions remain can be either I don't think they're very great, or there's just no tape on them. It could be either or. I do scour the earth for these, but some players are easier to find than others. So we've started with callback quite a lot, so I'm not going to do that this time. I was going to go with a quick one. DeJohn Owens. I had a whole video on DeJohn Owens. If you haven't seen that, I'll put down a card at the top. Also link in the description. Highly advise you to go and watch it, because I won't get too much into why I think he's an all-star, so you go and watch the video. Really good corner. Top 3 or 4 in ELF in my opinion. And he's locked into Cologne for a second season. He was massively underrated. For those that have seen that first video, you know how twitchy and how much he studies players after the first game and how he comes back second time always stronger. So I'm really excited to see how he does with a third and fourth meet against some of these guys. But overall, for me, I think he's in for an all-star selection. He was nominated last year, didn't quite make the cut. I think he should have, but moving on. We're going to go to the most recent acquisition for Cologne. Sverri Finsen. He is from the Faroe Islands, which I believe is the first player ever to be from the Faroe Islands in European League history. He's also Danish, I believe, as well. Spent a lot of time in Denmark. Now, my Faroe Island history maybe isn't as keyed up as it should be, but as far as I'm aware, they're self-bodying and they have all their own laws, but they're kind of under the umbrella of Denmark, same as like Greenland. But he spent last season at Wheeling University as a linebacker, played a lot of outside. I think that he does have pretty decent coverage footwork, but he's more of a run guy. And I think for that, I'm going to put him as a role player. He does have maybe an undersized, a bit 5'11", 6 foot, about 210 he's listed as on the university page. So he is a smaller linebacker. We have seen smaller linebackers have success in the ELF. Ludwig Myron is a really good example of it. But for me, he would just kind of sit in this area as of now. He can tackle, he does have good blitz timing, but he's somewhat flat-footed when it comes out of his breaks, and I think that his trigger could be a little bit faster to the backfield, as well as like his awareness in coverage is fine. He is a zone coverage guy. I wouldn't put him on a manned up on someone like Tom Iwaiwo, who can just beat him for speed. Lucky Ogbovin, he plays inside linebacker, he plays outside linebacker, he plays rush. Wherever you need him on that linebacker core, he will play it. He's coming from the Raiders Tyrrell. He's now moved to Cologne Centurions. It was quite a surprising move, but the Austrian linebacker, I've done a whole evaluation and I'll link that in the description. He is the premier of European linebackers. He's long, he's athletic, he's fast, he gets the ball out. He is an all-star player. He has been an all-star player last season, and I think he is going to remain an all-star player. He is going to be going to the CFL pre-draft process. He might go to the CFL. We don't know. He might not. He is 23, so he has, crazy potential. He spent the last 3 years in the ELF, so he is really a pioneer when it comes to that, and he's only 23 years old, so he's just getting better and better as well. More tackles last year, more sacks last year. He's become a lot better at fumbling, getting the ball out and recovering the fumbles himself as well. He's just, and his pass breakups, he's great. So, for me, all-star player, I think he's my favourite European linebacker in the league. I think he just locks in with DeJohn up at All-Star. He's done it once, he can do it again. Actually, I'll put him even more over here because corner is super competitive. As far as linebacker goes, he kind of stands above the rest of his contemporaries. Daniel Leoma is next. He's a tight end coming from Eastern Illinois University. He was mostly used as a kicker and a blocking tight end for his time there. So this is kind of weird. So they have two tight ends. We'll get to Robin in a second, but Daniel is more of a blocking guy, so I think they'll have him more in the line of scrimmage. His hand placement is pretty good, and he is a solid he's a D1 guy, so he definitely has the acclimate to succeed in the next level. He's young, he might have to shake off a bit of rust, and because maybe his lack of receiver value, I'm going to put him in role player. He is a young guy, like he could come out and he could put 1,000 yards up, but we don't really have that much tape on him. All we have is a short little bit and some excerpts from articles and his page himself on the university. So there are a lot of questions remain because he only got one catch in college. So I think that he's going to fit into a role player and be a predominantly blocking receiver with more receiver value than most because he's a D1 player. Time will tell on this one because this guy has potential. A lot of these guys are young, like two guys out of college. DeJohn's not very old. Lucky is 23, so a lot of young upside, and that does not change here. Victor Newman, Swedish offensive tackle. He is huge. He's only 21. He's 6'4". He's 320 pounds. He is massive. He wears a black visor. Looks awesome. I'm not gonna lie. I love a lineman with a black visor. He is big, but the trade-off for the size is the speed. Like he can anchor really, really well, but doesn't have necessarily the movement that you would need as a top flight offensive lineman. He's okay, but he's huge, so it's kind of harder for him to get out of the blocks. And because of maybe some of his size, his pad level is not great. Like he can be beat in the leverage battle. He dips his head an awful lot, like an awful lot. Vision is going to be a problem when it comes to that, and also just taking that much shots to the head is gonna affect you during the season. It's a long season, and if you start cleaning it up, I think you could be a lot more in the longevity department. But as of now, I'm a little bit worried about that. He's only 21, he likes a lot of technique, but for me, he would also fit into this role player. He came last year from the Brennan Rebels. He's not played that much football. Like, he's 21. He might have started when he was younger, but this is step up, So, I need to see him as someone who doesn't have the best movement take on an Alessandro Fernandez, a Dusan Novanovic, someone with an elite off-the-ball snap. So, there are quite a lot of players fitting into that of we need to see a little bit more. And I think it's kind of the thing when it comes to the Cologne season at the moment is players need to see a little bit more. All right, we know these guys are good. It's quite a divide at the moment. Now, Cologne have done an interesting job in building their team because they got Lance Liotta, the Samoan defensive tackle. Now, I really, really love Lance, but for me, he's kind of fitting into this bench player role. He's had a lot of injuries. He's missed a lot of time during the season. His first year, he left with some injuries. Leipzig, he had some injuries. The Enthroners, he had injuries. He played 4 games last year, which were week 1, week 5, week 9, and then week 12 and 13. So injuries are a concern. He was excellent in 2021. He was an all-star level player, but when you get injured that much, you need to start managing reps. And I think that's what they're going to do. They're going to have him rotating on these reps. Maybe you could argue role player for that, because he does have really good... he moves people. He's still super strong. So, yeah, I'll keep him at role player. They're going to manage him this season of trying to keep him fit and healthy, because having him for a few reps a game is obviously not optimal for an E-import player. When he was in his prime in 2021, fucking all-star level player. But with the injuries, with the time, with the not great teams he's been on, he's declined slightly. His production's declined, his injuries have been an issue. He can move any interior offensive lineman in the league. And because he is slightly smaller, he's about 6 foot 300, he just wins the leverage battle quite often. Which, he's smaller, can't affect the pass as much with his arms, doesn't have as much punch separation, but wins the leverage battle. Now, I was very surprised when they went with an American defensive tackle, Will Lytle. But started going into the tape, he is seriously really, really good. He's Defensive Player of the Year in his conference, his all-region He's a D2, like, All-American. He's kind of been there and done that when it comes to a D2 level. It is a D2 level. Again, he's kind of smaller, but he will play all of the line scrimmage. So he's not a defensive tackle by definition. He's played everywhere. He's second in the school's history for sacks as well, which is huge. Like, he got 10 sacks in 2021. I know that's quite a while ago, but some of these guys don't have necessarily the most updated statistics. He played from 2017, and then he played in 2019, and then he played in 2021. So I'm not really sure. COVID year would be in one of them, but production in the first year didn't really play that much, 0 sacks. And he got 8 sacks in the second year, and then 10 sacks in the third year. So he knows how to get to the passer, to be honest. And I've said before, he could edge into the All-Star selections. I would probably put him around All-Star to starter. He was at Helsinki last year, got All Maple League. He showed his skill set and his pass rush ability. He is a really, really talented guy. He actually bulked up to about 300, I think. I'm really, really close because I think he could edge into here. I'm going to keep him here because I think he starts over most people in the league. I just need to see him against competition that's a little bit higher. Because Helsinki Roosters are really good, and I think the Maple League is slept on. I love the Maple League. I think it's great. You know, questions are still here about stepping up into the competition. I'm going to have him comfortably as a starter. Robin Mayoborg is next. I actually had quite a low grade on Robin until I saw him in Holland and was like, fucking hell, like, it's kind of a proof that tape doesn't tell the whole story sometimes. And I think that given Daniel is going to be more of a blocking tight end, to have a second tight end's odd, but I think either they'll run with, 2 tight end sets, or he's just going to go out to receiver because he has great hands and he can block very well. I'm going to put him above Daniel. I think he's a better, more polished tight end than Daniel. Same thing as Will Lytle. I think when it comes to competition level, I need to see him step up into more of a competition that is stronger in the safety department, because he's huge. He can bully a safety when they come into the press cover situation. Like, he's 6'6", 250, and he looks 6'6", 250. He's like, Daniel's a little bit smaller. Daniel's about 6'2", 230. So he, they could go back and forth. I think they'll kind of flex those guys around and keep people guessing with those. But for Robin, I'm very close to starter, but I think I'm going to keep him here just until I see a little bit more of him. Isaiah Weed. Now, I was very surprised to see them go for Isaiah Weed. He was one of the best QBs in GFL 2 last year. He was second in pretty much everything. Completions, percentage, completion total, touchdowns. He was second as well. And he wasn't high in his deceptions. He only had 8. His passing yards per game were third. His yards were third. Like, he was in the top conversation in the GFL 2. However, it's GFL 2. This is massively different. You could argue he's not even playing the top 2 leagues in Germany, if you count the ELF and those teams, and the German Talent Naples. And then you got GFL 1, which is, kind of just those guys that aren't quite ELF, but some of them definitely are. But then you got GFL 2. It's a huge, huge step up. And I don't think he dominated. Like, he was obviously one of the better quarterbacks there, but he didn't dominate. So I would like to see him in the league. Questions are there for me. He's very fast. He can extend the plays. He is pretty big. He's like 6'3", 195, so he definitely has the size. He ran an unofficial 4.58 with a 3.97 shuttle and 31 in the vert. So he has athleticism as well. But footwork is a little bit, and then he was kind of slow to read defenses. And GFL 2 defenses are not going to be the same as ELF defenses. So I need to see how he responds to that. I think that he's going to edge into here. Because I've seen Robin. I haven't seen Isaiah in person. So I think, for me, he's going to sit in here. There are a lot of questions whether or not he can make the step up. Some people near the Rostock Griffins have said, no, he's really good. Like, he shouldn't have even been in GFL 2 last year. He was a GFL 1 quarterback. I need to see it myself. Let's go into the last one, the creme de la creme. Connor Weddington, NFL experience. Connor Weddington is a fascinating player because he's played in practice squads in the NFL, so he certainly has potential to be an NFL guy. He ran a 4.44 in college. He went to Stanford, so he's obviously an accomplished athlete and also a scholar. He did not perform in his senior year. He only got 157 yards, and that's kind of led to him slipping on draft positions when undrafted. But in his junior year, 506 yards. And then previous to that, sophomore year, 65 yards. And then Freshman year, 243. So it's just a lot of inconsistency. The big thing is scoring. It's 4 years of college and 106 receptions. He scored once. So he's not a scorer. In Europe, is he going to be more of a scorer? Probably. But the big knock on him coming out of Stanford was creating separation. I think he'll be able to create separation in Europe. He's an NFL fucking wide receiver. As I said before with Matt Cole at Rocklaw, he's an NFL fucking wide receiver. So if you don't think that he's going to be able to create separation here, then, well, I don't know what to tell you. But the touchdown thing is an issue. 1 touchdown at 106 catches is an issue. Hasn't played in a while because he's been on the practice squads and kind of touching the NFL. But for me, he would, he'd have to come into this all-star conversation. I think because the receiver's so competitive, so is corner, I'm going to keep them kind of like here. Lucky, I think, is a lock for all-star just because he's such a good linebacker. Doesn't mean that he's a better linebacker than Connor as a receiver. No, it doesn't. But in terms of how I think this league's going to shape up, very competitive, and I have some questions on the quarterback play. So Connor Weddington from Stanford, played for the Seahawks, played for the Niners, played for the Texans. He's going to be an all-star selection conversation if he can get in the end zone and be more consistent. But that'll round us out. Cologne have been in somewhat of a purgatory. They had a really good defense last year and then just fucked it offensively. I was rewatching some of the tape and I was just like they were in so many games and the offense has let them down. But they've clearly tried to address that. They've got a lot in the interior line. They invested one spot in the offensive line, which is interesting. 2 tight ends, but they can both block. A linebacker, another linebacker. So defense is still looks to be quite imperative. They're going to try and stop the run with an American D-tackle, which is not the norm when it comes to Europe. They usually go for 2 DBs or a DB and a linebacker. So having an interior lineman is certainly something. We'll see if it pays off for them, but I like the Cologne team, and it's going to shape up really well. They've got some underrated German talent. I'm going to do probably the same thing for here with the homegrowns for each country. That might take a little bit longer to do, understandably so. But if you enjoyed this one, like, subscribe, and the rest of it, put notifications on or whatever. I made a Dusan Ivanovic video yesterday, but obviously it's a Serbian defensive end playing in Poland, so it's a very niche video. But appreciate if you go see that one. Thank you very much, and see you later, and goodbye.